Hello, and you are back in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. This is our 31st episode, and today we'll be discussing the state's role in pushing transgenderism, and Ukraine will go broke without us. So we're going to get right into the first topic. It's going to be a pretty long topic, and then we'll go into Ukraine. We're going to talk about transgenderism and the state's role in pushing it onto the population. Now, I'm writing a book about this, if you've been following me, a very technical takedown of gender ideology. So I've been in the weeds of this. I've been following this topic very closely and intimately involved with it. And when you get that deep into weeds with it, you realize just how much these legacy institutions, that being the state, big corporations, the big media institutions and cultural institutions like Hollywood and traditional television are pushing gender ideology onto the population. But we're going to focus on the state's role specifically in doing that, and we're going to mention the first article. This is a bit of an old one, but it illustrates my point quite well. The headline is "No Free Lunch. Biden admin will pull meal funding for schools that don't comply with its LGBT agenda." And the main thing I want to read here is that the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition Service, announced in May of 22, it will prevent low-income students from participating in its national school lunch program if the schools, their public schools, do not adopt the administration's interpretation of Title IX, which includes gender identity as discrimination that you can't do. So if you identify as a woman, then that has to be respected, even if you were born male, vice versa, whatever else you feel like this day, whatever new things going on. That's besides the point. So anyway, this is saying you have to capitulate with whatever the alphabet mafia says, or else the lower income kids don't get to eat. So when you have this centralized education system through the Department of Education, and they do funding like this, they can use it like a cudgel if you have people who are politically biased doing so. And this administration definitely is very much so biased. If you look at the movie Lady Ballers just came out, which I reviewed, one of the stars apparently got arrested by the FBI just as the movie comes out. I mean, that can't be a coincidence. I'm just saying. So the state has the monopoly on force, violence, and ultimate decision making, and they're using that to push transgenderism onto the population. And it's very evident with this article, the fact that I think with Obamacare, certain insurance companies were basically forced to cover gender affirming care, these surgeries and treatments that transgender people is something that had to be covered by the insurance agency. So that made the financial incentive basically a forced thing as well, and that's the state forcing that as well. So with regulations, with the control of the financial system and the education system, there is a lot of decision making. They're using the decision making to say, hey, we're going to make decisions that are going to make the environment more opening to people accepting gender ideology and people thinking that this is legitimate. If insurances cover your gender reassignment surgery, so it's very legitimate to get your penis turned into a vagina, or to get your healthy breast cut off, or to get or to inject yourself with cross-sex hormones, because it has to be paid for by insurance, so it must be a legitimate medical treatment, right? And that's why the state is that's the state is doing these sorts of things, and that legitimizes it. And that's why you see gender activists want the state to be in existence so bad. That's why so many people want the state to exist so bad, because they want to use its power to legitimize their insanity. That's the basic thing. And we're going to move on to the second article, and this is a more recent one. This was just yesterday from CNN. It will be linked. The archive of this article will be linked in the Substack below. The headline is "Why Montana's Two-Spirit People Are Challenging a State Law That Defines Sex as Binary." So Montana passed Senate Bill 458. I think this was a while ago, but anyway, Senate Bill 458 passes in Montana. Defines male and female based on the presence of XY or XX chromosomes, as well as reproductive systems. So if you have a penis, you're a man. You have a woman, you're a vagina. Very bigoted of Montana to pass this. So but a bunch of people got together saying that, this is a bad thing, this is discriminatory. The Two-Spirit people are very much a real thing, and they're going to be very deeply affected by this law, so it just has to go away. And this is, again, you see the state using the legal system to say, hey, we're being oppressed by this, we're going to challenge it. So this is definitely a bit of a push or pull. This is one of the rare cases where you have, well, not rare, it's more and more common, you see these red states banning basically banning child mutilation with these, or gender affirming care for minors, as they like to put it, but really it's destroying a healthy child's body in the name of protecting trans youth. Utterly ridiculous, but there are laws in some red states that have been passed and or proposed. I think Florida had one. I think Tennessee had one, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, you have Montana passing this bill saying, hey, men are men, women are women, and of course that gets everyone in a tizzy. But the fact that this legal system exists and it can be challenged like this, and people have to capitulate to whatever decision is made, is part of how the state is pushing this onto the population. I wouldn't be surprised if something like Senate Bill 458 was planted by the Union Party to create this ability for these people, this two-spirit community of natives to go and say, hey, we're being discriminated against, to further legitimize that, and also bring the racial and the indigenous aspect into defending gender ideology. It's the whole progressive stack, right? Race is very high on the progressive stack, so if you can make something about race, then it becomes you get even more points in the Oppression Olympics, and add on to the trans stuff as well. It's a very good formula. Is getting lots of sympathy from the half of the country that meaningfully gives a shit about this. So that's the basic thing there, and I did believe I touched on the FBI arresting stars of Lady Ballers just as the movie premieres as well. That if I didn't, I'll touch on that. I don't know the star's name. I just saw the video from recording when I saw basically that headline, right, of that happening. So I don't know all the details of it, but something like that happening is just the state, again, using its monopoly on force to basically take out someone who's against gender ideology, someone who is pushing back against it in a meaningful cultural way, to try and push fear and intimidation onto people, saying, hey, if you do something like this, then you could be having the FBI knocking on your door, right? So they want people to be scared of them and want people to go along with it. That's why you call it the alphabet mafia, right? When you have stuff like this, when you've got the state and all these corporations backing you, and you've got mobs of angry Twitter warriors that'll cancel you if you say someone's pronouns wrong, or hell, if you call someone Bud that's identifies as female, then everyone gets up in arms as well on Twitter. That's what got Jimmy Fallon in a bit of trouble there. So very sensitive people will throw you off the bridge as soon as they perceive you as not jiggling and gyrating to every single word that they say. And that's why I definitely feel the need to write this book, with just how insane what they're proposing to do to the human body, what transition does to your body, and saying this is normal, good, life-saving. I definitely do not think it is. I've got good reasons for thinking so, and that's why I'm writing the book, to compile that information and give it all to you lovely, lovely people out there. But we are going to move into the next topic, and that is Ukraine. So a lot of y'all might have forgotten about Ukraine. We moved on to the next proxy war that's in the Israel-Hamas war. That's our next proxy war. That's the more popular one, but the one in Ukraine is still going on. But Ukraine is apparently going to run out of money at the end of the year, so they obviously need more money. So this whole situation, these proxy wars, these forever wars, whatever you want to call them, this warring of the empires, is completely unsustainable from the front lines that is happening. So Ukraine would not be able to do what it's doing without American support, without NATO support, and what's going on with Israel Hamas wouldn't be able to go on without funding from Israel, and funding from all the other people who are funding Hamas. I'm sure it's not just, it's not like Hamas just has all this stuff lying around. And if they did, it's because we left it there in Afghanistan, right? So again, this is all being very much external, brought to these front lines and funded there. But Ukraine is not a rich, prosperous nation. It should be, but there's a lot of factors to it. There's a lot of factors in play going against it, with Russia impeding on them, and them not being able to be part of NATO because that would anger Russia because they're so close, and all these sorts of things that have economically depressed them for years and years. So they need external support if they want to have a war against Russia like this. And also, a lot of this is just straight up money laundering, and that's why that's why they want the money to keep coming in, because you're stealing from poor Americans to make the rich Ukrainians even richer. So if you think that the money we're sending to Ukraine is going to help out the average Ukrainian citizen, then I'm sorry, you're on one. But that's why Zelensky and his ilk are so desperate for that American dollars, because they're using it to do whatever the hell they want with it. And I guess some of it might go to their war effort, but very little does. And that's why we shouldn't be giving money to Ukraine. Really shouldn't be giving money to Israel. We shouldn't have this American empire that requires billions and billions in foreign aid to even sustain, and all these proxy wars as well that just makes everyone even angrier at us, and just leads to bodies piling up on the floor or ground, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it. It's just death and destruction when you try and empire build to this degree. And I think if we stop that and we drew our lines in the sand far away from each other, then I think we'd be in a much better place. So my co-host of Hump Day Pope Redux, a very strict American isolationist, and I definitely see that perspective as well. And I'm definitely very much on board with getting out of Ukraine, getting out of Israel, getting out of everywhere, not just boots on the ground, even though we're not really that much boots on the ground, but just financially. That's the most important thing. Stop giving them money and resources when we can't feed people in our streets, right? When we've got migrant crisis borders and all the polarization, all these problems in this country that we have to solve. We're trying to solve other people's countries. We're trying to be the world police when we can barely run our own police force effectively, right? So that's the whole thing there. But Ukraine would be screwed without us, and I would say the American politicians would be screwed if they didn't have Ukraine and Israel and all the other bullshit issues they could point to as to what to be concerned about, rather than their complete failings as leaders. But with that, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this one, and we're going into the outro now. Thank you for being in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. Be sure to follow my Substack, velvetroompublishing.substack.com, to read Machine to Man and all my other projects.